I told my best friend. Her boyfriend was controlling. She cut off her therapist, her family, and me. When I begged her to see what he was doing, she looked away and said, "He showed me everyone's true colors." I didn't say a word. That was last spring. Today, she sat in my back room clutching her baby bump and whimpering, "He always finds me." My best friend got into a toxic relationship, so I cut her off. Me and Sarah had been best friends since senior year. She was my ride or die. When my dad got sick, she showed up to the hospital with snacks, a blanket, and a charger I didn't even realize I needed. And we literally had a shared Pinterest board titled Our Future Life, full of travel plans, matching tattoos, and apartment decor. There was just one thing about her. She was always the naive type. The type to blindly go through life with a huge heart. She once lent a guy $300 after 3 dates because he swore his account was frozen. So I was always grateful to be in her life, because I thought I could be the one to protect her from people who take advantage of her. Until our final year of college when she met Riley. I instantly hated him, and not even in a protective bestie way. In just the first week of meeting each other, he somehow convinced her to turn on her location, while his was still off. We went from FaceTiming all day every day, to texting once a week. So of course I was worried. I did everything I could to see her. And when we hung out, I tried to tell her she was being controlled, that he was isolating her. "No, he just showed me everyone's true colors," is what she'd always say. Well, some of her friends were actually pretty crappy, so if she cut them off and it ended there, I'd be happy. But no. He forced her to not only cut off her therapist, but also to go no contact with her family and guidance counselor too. She wasn't even allowed to email her male professors about anything, school-related or otherwise, and I knew I had to do everything I could to make sure I wasn't next to be booted from her life. So I offered for them both to come over for dinner. My plan was to be super accommodating to Riley and to make sure he approved me so that Sarah wouldn't be forced to cut me off. I did everything. Cooked his favorite meal. Told him that I agreed that it's only okay for men to cheat. Let him jokingly call me a fat beach. And it worked. Too well. "Hey, show me where the bathroom is," he demanded. He spoke like a king waiting on a servant. "Of course," I said, beaming. And as soon as I opened the door for him, I felt his entire body press against mine. Suddenly, his cold lips landed on mine. "If you wanted to turn, you could have just asked." His words hit me like ice in the chest. I couldn't even help the scream that escaped my throat. Sarah ran up the stairs and Riley shoved me off of him. "Get the F away from me, you a word," he yelled, acting horrified. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. My heart broke. I knew I had lost her. They left right after, and she immediately blocked me on everything. I couldn't sleep at all that night. Riley had her all to himself. Over the next few weeks, I'd check up on her with fake accounts I made. I noticed she stopped posting any photos of herself and unfollowed every single male on Instagram, including her godfather. But life goes on, I guess. And I ended up getting my dream job as a fashion designer in a shop nearby. I still thought about Sarah almost every day, though. And whenever I was sad, I'd scroll through our saved media and our chat together. It always made me laugh. I never saw her again. Until a year later, that is. She came into my store, and the first thing I noticed was her baby bump. My eyes widened, because she was very pregnant. The second our eyes met, I could feel how tired hers were. "Hey, Sarah!" My voice couldn't hide my joy. She didn't say anything, just put a white dress down on the table in front of me. A crease formed between my eyes as I inspected the dress, and that's when I saw it. Blood marks. I figured it was just period blood and had no idea why she'd come to me. But then I looked up at her again. Tears rolled down her chin, one after the other. I looked at her a little closer, and noticed a bruise that looked like it had been covered up with concealer on her shoulder. "I embarrassed him," she said, voice shaking. I just stayed silent, giving her room to continue. Turns out they had gone to one of his company events together. She wore the white maternity dress, and all his coworkers and their wives were calling her disgusting for flaunting her pregnancy in front of everyone. So he hit her, over and over. My stomach caved in. I rushed her into the staff room and grabbed her phone. Her password was still the same, so I turned off her location. I told her to wait until my shift was over, and I'd drive her to mine, for as long as she needed. She didn't respond, just gave a silent nod. But there was something she didn't know. In the year that we didn't talk, I had built up a lot of hate towards Riley. I had probably imagined 100 different ways of ruining his life, and now it was finally time to execute. I couldn't focus on anything for the rest of my shift. I kept checking on Sarah in the staff room every 15 minutes. My manager Jamie kept giving me weird looks, but I just told her I wasn't feeling well. When Sarah fell asleep on the small couch, I finally breathed a little. She looked so exhausted, one hand resting protectively over her baby bump, her dark hair falling across her face. The fluorescent lights made the bruise on her cheekbone look even worse than it had when she first stumbled into the boutique 2 hours ago. My shift ended at 6, and I gently woke Sarah up. She startled awake, eyes wide with panic before recognizing me. That reaction alone told me everything I needed to know about what her life had been like. Her fingers trembled as she pushed her hair back, revealing more bruising along her jawline that she tried to cover with makeup. "Let's go," I whispered. "My car's out back." I helped her into my hit-up Honda, constantly scanning the parking lot for any sign of Riley. The early evening air felt heavy with tension as I guided her to the passenger seat. The whole drive to my apartment, she kept checking her phone, which was blowing up with texts. I glanced over at one point and saw, "Where the frick are you?" in all caps. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "He's going to find me," she mumbled, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "He always does." "Not this time," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I reached over and squeezed her hand briefly before returning mine to the wheel. My apartment was small but cozy. The warm yellow walls and mismatched furniture had always felt like home to me. Mochi, my gray tabby cat, immediately took a liking to Sarah, rubbing against her legs as she sat on my couch. I made her some chamomile tea and ordered pizza. We didn't talk much that first night. She just stared at the TV while I pretended to watch too, both of us processing the fact that she was actually here, safe for now. The bruises on her arms told a story she wasn't ready to share, and I wasn't ready to hear. The next morning, I called in sick to work. No way was I leaving her alone. Sarah was still asleep when I made coffee, curled up in a protective ball on my pull-out couch. The morning light streaming through the blinds illuminated the dark circles under her eyes. When she finally woke up, she looked disoriented, her gaze darting around the unfamiliar room before settling on me. "I need to go back," she said immediately, reaching for her phone with shaking hands. "He's going to be so mad." "Sarah, you can't go back," I said, taking her hands in mine. Her skin felt cold despite the warmth of the apartment. "Look at what he did to you." She pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. "You don't understand. He'll find me, and it'll be worse." I took a deep breath, setting my coffee mug down on the table between us. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." And she did. Over the next hour, between sobs and long pauses where she seemed to disappear into her memories, Sarah told me how things had escalated after that night at my apartment. Riley had convinced her I was trying to sabotage their relationship because I was jealous. He'd gone through her phone, deleted photos of us, and even told her I had badmouthed her to mutual friends. All lies, crafted to isolate her from the people who cared about her most. The controlling behavior got worse after they moved in together. He made her quit her job because pregnant women shouldn't work. He controlled their finances completely, giving her an allowance that barely covered essentials. The pregnancy wasn't planned. He poked holes in condoms because he wanted to make sure she couldn't leave. The bruises started in her second trimester, always in places people wouldn't see, until recently when his rage had become less calculated. By the time she finished talking, I was shaking with rage, but I knew getting angry wouldn't help her now. She needed a plan, not my fury. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth and tried to think practically. "We need to get your stuff from his place," I said, pushing my hair back from my face. And then we need to file a police report. Sarah's eyes widened in panic. No police. He said if I ever went to the cops, he'd take the baby away. His dad, the lawyer. Her hands moved protectively to her stomach, which was just beginning to show beneath her borrowed t-shirt. I wanted to argue, but decided to take one step at a time. Okay, let's focus on getting your important documents and clothes first. We figured out that Riley would be at work until 5. That gave us a 3-hour window to go to their apartment and grab her essentials. I borrowed my coworker Alex's car, a nondescript silver sedan, so Riley wouldn't recognize mine if he came home early. Alex had raised an eyebrow when I asked, but didn't pry when I mentioned it was an emergency. The drive to their apartment was tense. Sarah kept fidgeting with her sleeves, pulling them down to cover the bruises on her wrists. Her breathing quickened as we approached the upscale complex where she lived with Riley. When we pulled into the parking lot, she froze, her face draining of color. I can't do this, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the car's idle. Yes, you can, I said firmly, reaching over to squeeze her shoulder. I'm right here with you. We'll be quick. We hurried inside and Sarah used her key to open the door. The apartment was immaculate, eerily so. Everything had a place, and I got the feeling that if anything was out of order, there would be consequences. The pristine white furniture and minimalist decor felt cold and impersonal. Nothing like the warm home Sarah had described creating when they first moved in together. Sarah moved quickly, grabbing her passport, birth certificate, and some clothes. I found a small backpack and started filling it with her prenatal vitamins and toiletries. The bathroom cabinet revealed prescription bottles with Sarah's name. Anxiety medication she'd never mentioned to me. Hurry, she kept saying, checking her phone obsessively. He sometimes comes home for lunch. I was in their bedroom helping her pack, when I noticed a small safe in the closet. What's in there? My jewelry and some cash, she said, glancing nervously at the bedroom doors as if expecting Riley to appear. But I don't know the combination. I tried her birthday. Nothing. His birthday. Nothing. Then I tried their anniversary date and it clicked open. Inside was about $2,000 in cash, some gold jewelry that looked like family heirlooms, a delicate necklace with a sapphire pendant that Sarah said was her grandmother's, and a USB drive. I grabbed it all, wrapping the jewelry carefully in a soft t-shirt before placing it in the bag. We were almost done when Sarah's phone rang, the sound cutting through the tense silence like a knife. Her face went white as she stared at the screen. It's him. Don't answer, I said, zipping up the backpack. If I don't, he'll know something's wrong, she replied, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She took a deep breath and answered. Hey babe. I couldn't hear what Riley was saying, but I could tell from Sarah's face it wasn't good. She kept saying, I'm sorry, and I'll be there. Her voice grew smaller with each response. When she hung up, she looked terrified, her eyes wide with panic. He's coming home. Now he said he knows I'm not at the doctor's like I told him. My heart started racing, pounding against my ribs. How does he know that? He called the doctor's office pretending to be my brother, she said, grabbing the last of her things and shoving them haphazardly into her purse. We need to go. Now. We rushed out of the apartment and were halfway to the car when a black SUV screeched into the parking lot, tires squealing on the asphalt. Riley. He spotted us immediately and jumped out of his car, slamming the door behind him. Sarah! He bellowed, storming toward us. What the hell do you think you're doing? I pushed Sarah behind me, feeling her trembling against my back. Get in the car, I whispered to her. Then I turned to face Riley, planting my feet firmly on the ground. He looked exactly as I remembered, tall, conventionally handsome, with that cold, calculating look in his eyes. But now I could see the rage bubbling just beneath the surface, turning his handsome features into something menacing. His expensive suit and perfectly styled hair couldn't hide the monster underneath. Well, 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 he sneered when he recognized me. The jealous best friend returns. Stay away from her, Riley, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. He laughed, a hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. This is between me and my fiancé. This doesn't concern you. His eyes darted past me, searching for Sarah. It does when you put your hands on my friend, I shot back, standing my ground despite the fear coursing through me. His face darkened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. She tell you that? Sarah's always been dramatic. Pregnancy hormones making her crazy. He took a step closer, towering over me. I heard the car door open behind me. Sarah had gotten in. Good. Move, Riley said, trying to step around me, his expensive cologne overwhelming as he invaded my space. I stood my ground, blocking his path. No. What happened next was so fast I barely had time to react. Riley grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. I said move, you stupid bitch. I yanked my arm away and shoved him as hard as I could. He stumbled back, surprise flashing across his face before it contorted with rage. He lunged at me, but I was already running to the driver's side of the car. I jumped in and locked the doors just as Riley reached us. He pounded on the window, screaming obscenities, his face red with fury. Go! Sarah cried, her voice breaking with terror. I reversed so fast I nearly hit another car. Riley chased us on foot until we reached the exit, then ran back to his SUV. It took random turns through the neighborhood, constantly checking the rearview mirror, my hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel. He's going to follow us, Sarah said, her voice shaking as she clutched the dashboard. He's going to find us. No, he won't, I assured her, though I wasn't so sure myself. I drove to a mall parking lot and parked in a crowded section, nestled between two larger vehicles. We need to switch cars again. He knows what Alex's car looks like now. I called my other coworker Barbara, who lived nearby. I gave her some excuse about car trouble, and she agreed to pick us up. While we waited, I checked Sarah's phone and found what I suspected, a tracking app disguised as a weather app. I deleted it immediately, then showed Sarah how he'd been monitoring her location all this time. Her hands trembled as she took the phone back. Barbara arrived 20 minutes later, looking confused when she saw Sarah's pregnant belly and our panicked faces. I gave her a simplified version of the truth, that Sarah's ex was dangerous and we needed a ride. Barbara, bless her, didn't ask questions. She drove us back to my apartment, taking a roundabout route at my request, her concerned glances in the rearview mirror telling me she understood more than I'd explained. Once we were safely inside, I triple-checked that all the doors and windows were locked. Sarah collapsed on the couch, exhausted and terrified. I made her some tea and sat beside her, the weight of the day settling over us like a heavy blanket. What's on the USB? She asked suddenly, her voice small in the quiet apartment. I had forgotten about it in the chaos. I grabbed my laptop and plugged it in. The drive contained dozens of folders with women's names. I clicked on one labeled Jessica and found screenshots of text conversations, photos, and what looked like a schedule of someone's daily routine. The next folder, Amanda, contained similar stalking materials. Oh my god, Sarah whispered, her face pale in the blue light of the screen. These are his exes. I opened more folders. Some contained explicit photos that were clearly taken without consent. Others had detailed notes about the women's vulnerabilities. One had debt problems, another had immigration issues. The last folder was labeled Sarah. It contained everything from her social security number to photos of her sleeping. There were even screenshots of conversations between us from years ago, before she even met Riley. He's been stalking all these women, I said, feeling sick to my stomach. This is evidence. Sarah stared at the screen, her hand over her mouth. There are so many. I copied everything to my laptop, then hid the USB in a tampon box in my bathroom. We needed to go to the police, but I knew Sarah wasn't ready yet. She was still terrified of Riley's threats about taking the baby. That night, I made up the pull-out couch for myself and gave Sarah my bed. Neither of us slept much. I could hear her tossing and turning through the thin wall. Around 3 a.m., headlights swept across my bedroom wall as a car pulled up outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw Riley's SUV idling across the street. My blood ran cold. "He found us," I whispered to Sarah, who had joined me at the window, her nightgown billowing around her in the air from the heating vent. "How?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. I thought about it. "Your prenatal vitamins. The prescription label has my address on it." We watched as Riley got out of his car and approached my building. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but Sarah stopped me, her fingers wrapping around my wrist. "Wait," she said. "If we call the police, they'll just talk to him and leave. Then he'll be even angrier." She was right. We needed more than a temporary solution. I texted my neighbor Robert, an off-duty security guard who lived across the hall. I gave him a quick rundown of the situation, and bless him, he immediately went downstairs to check on a noise complaint. I watched from the window as Robert confronted Riley in the parking lot. After a tense conversation, Riley got back in his car and drove away. Robert texted me that he'd told Riley he had the wrong address and that the building had security cameras everywhere. It wouldn't keep him away for long, but it bought us time. The next morning, I called Jamie and explained enough of the situation that she gave me a week off work. Sarah was a nervous wreck, jumping at every sound. Riley had been calling her nonstop, alternating between threats and apologies. I finally convinced her to turn off her phone completely. We needed help, and I knew just who to call. Jennifer, my college roommate, now worked as a victim advocate at a domestic violence shelter. She came over that afternoon and spent hours talking with Sarah, explaining her options and the resources available. By the end of their conversation, Sarah had agreed to file for an emergency restraining order. The process was intimidating. We went to the courthouse the next day, where Sarah had to detail the abscess in excruciating detail. I sat beside her, holding her hand as she described the escalating violence. The judge granted the temporary order, which would be served to Riley that day. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. That night, Sarah seemed a little lighter, like she could finally see a way out. We were making dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Is this OP?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Amanda. I think we have a mutual problem." My heart skipped a hit. Amanda, one of the names from the USB drive. "How did you get my number?" I asked. "Riley's been served with a restraining order. Your name was on the witness list," she explained. "I've been monitoring his cases. I'm not the only one." Amanda told me that several of Riley's exes had formed a support group. They'd been gathering evidence against him for months, but were too scared to come forward individually. When they heard about Sarah's restraining order, they saw an opportunity. "We want to help," Amanda said. "All of us." The next day, I met Amanda and 3 other women at a coffee shop across town. They all had similar stories. Riley had charmed them, isolated them, then absed them. Each had evidence, texts, emails, photos of injuries. Together, it painted a damning picture of a serial abuser. "He's escalating," said one woman named Mary, her dark eyes serious as she showed me photos of her own bruises from 2 years ago. "What he did to me was bad, but what he's doing to Sarah is worse." They agreed to give statements to support Sarah's case. It felt like we finally had a fighting chance. But Riley wasn't going down without a fight. The next day, he showed up at my workplace. Jamie called me in a panic, saying he was making a scene, claiming his mentally unstable pregnant wife was hiding with me and needed medical attention. I told Jamie to call the police and not to tell him anything. By the time I called Sarah to warn her, Riley had already left the boutique and was heading to my apartment. I told her to lock herself in the bathroom and not to open the door for anyone but me. I raced home, running every red light. When I got to my building, Riley's SUV was parked haphazardly in the fire lane. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding in my ears. I found my apartment door ajar. Inside, the place was trashed. Furniture overturned, dishes smashed, but no sign of Riley or Sarah. "Sarah!" I called out, panic rising in my throat. The bathroom door opened slowly, and Sarah emerged, shaking, but unharmed. "He kicked the door in," she whispered. I hid in the shower behind the curtain. He looked for me, but then someone knocked on the door and he ran out. I hugged her tightly, relief washing over me. The neighbor across the hall poked his head in, saying he'd called the police when he heard the commotion. They arrived minutes later, took statements, and documented the damage. Because of the restraining order, they put out an APB for Riley's arrest for violation, but he seemed to have vanished. His apartment was empty when police checked. His workplace said he hadn't shown up for days. His phone went straight to voicemail. It was like he disappeared, which somehow felt more terrifying than knowing where he was. For the next week, we stayed with Jennifer at her place. The domestic violence shelter helped Sarah get connected with legal aid to start divorce proceedings and custody arrangements. The USB drive proved invaluable. The evidence of Riley's pattern of ABC strengthened her case enormously. I was returning from a grocery run when I noticed a familiar black SUV following me. My heart raced as I called Jennifer. "Riley's following me," I said quietly. "I'm 3 blocks away." "Drive to the police station," she instructed. "Don't come here." I made a sudden turn and the SUV sped up, pulling alongside me. Riley rolled down his window, his face contorted with rage. "Where is she?" he screamed, swerving toward my car. I accelerated, but he kept pace, repeatedly trying to run me off the road. I was approaching an intersection when he sideswiped my car. The impact sent me spinning, but I managed to regain control and stay in my lane, narrowly avoiding oncoming traffic. Riley pulled up next to me, jumped out of his car, and yanked open my door before I could lock it. He grabbed my arm and pulled me out onto the pavement. "Tell me where she is," he growled, his fingers digging into my skin. "Go to hell," I spat back. His face darkened, and he raised his hand to strike me when suddenly, a car horn blared. Headlights illuminated us, and Riley looked up, momentarily distracted. It was enough time for me to knee him in the groin. He doubled over in pain, and I scrambled back into my car, locking the doors. The other car pulled up beside us, and I recognized the driver. It was David, one of Sarah's cousins. He must have been driving by and recognized Riley. David jumped out of his car and confronted Riley, who was still hunched over in pain. "Police are on their way, a-hole," David shouted. Riley looked between us, then ran back to his SUV and sped away, tires screeching. David helped me back to Jennifer's place, where Sarah was waiting anxiously. When she saw my bruised arm and torn clothes, she broke down. "This is all my fault," she sobbed, her tears falling onto my shoulder as she hugged me. "No," I said firmly. "This is Riley's fault. Only Riley's." That night, we decided enough was enough. With help from Jennifer and the other women, we devised a plan to end this once and for all. The next morning, we put our plan into action. Jennifer helped us contact a lawyer friend who specialized in domestic violence cases. We gathered all the evidence, the USB drive, photos of Sarah's injuries, screenshots of threatening texts, and statements from Riley's other victims. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Valerie, reviewed everything and told us we had a solid case. "This is more than enough for a permanent restraining order," she said, organizing the files on her desk. "And with the property damage and assault charges, he's looking at serious jail time." Sarah still seemed hesitant. She kept rubbing her belly and looking at the floor. "What if he comes after the baby?" she whispered. "What if he gets custody?" Valerie shook her head firmly. "With this evidence and these witnesses, that's not happening. Courts don't give children to documented abusers." We filed the paperwork that afternoon. The court date was set for the following week. In the meantime, we stayed at Jennifer's place, taking turns watching the door and windows. David and a couple other friends took shifts sitting in cars outside, keeping an eye out for Riley's SUV. 3 days before the court date, Sarah's water broke, 2 weeks early. I rushed her to the hospital while Jennifer called the police to let them know what was happening. We were worried Riley might show up. The labor was long and scary. Sarah crushed my hand through each contraction, tears streaming down her face. I kept telling her she was doing great, even though I had no clue if that was true. The nurses gave me weird looks, probably wondering who the hell I was. "I'm her person," I told one nurse who asked if I was family. She just nodded and handed me an ice chip cup. After 18 hours, Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. She was tiny but perfect, with a full head of dark hair and these little fists that kept punching the air. Sarah named her Lily. When they placed the baby on her chest, Sarah looked at me with exhausted, tear-filled eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." I cried like a baby myself. Not gonna lie. The hospital had a uniformed police officer posted outside Sarah's room due to the active restraining order. We thought we were safe, but Riley had other ideas. On the second day, while Sarah was sleeping and I went to grab coffee, he somehow talked his way past hospital security. He claimed to be Lily's father, which technically he was, and said he just wanted to see his baby. By the time I got back to the room, he was standing over Sarah's bed, trying to take the baby from the bassinet. I dropped my coffee and screamed for help. Sarah woke up and started yelling. Riley turned to me with this look of pure hatred. "This is my family," he snarled, lunging toward me. I grabbed the closest thing, a metal food tray, and swung it at his head. It connected with a satisfying clang. He staggered backward, bumping into the bassinet. Sarah scrambled out of bed, yanking out her IV in the process, and grabbed Lily. Security burst in and tackled Riley to the ground. He kept screaming that we were kidnapping his child. The security guards weren't gentle as they dragged him out. One of them, a big guy with tattoos peeking out from his uniform sleeves, told me later that he hated woman beaters more than anything. The police arrested Riley for violating the restraining order and attempted kidnapping. The district attorney charged him with multiple felonies, and the judge denied bail given his history of violations and the serious nature of the charges. Sarah was discharged early for safety reasons, and we went straight to Jennifer's place, which now had a police car parked outside. The court date arrived. Sarah was terrified about facing Riley, but she was even more determined to protect Lily. She wore a simple blue dress and carried Lily in a sling across her chest. I walked beside her into the courthouse, along with Jennifer, Amanda, Mary, and 3 other women Riley had abused. Riley was already there with his father, both in expensive suits, looking smug. When he saw all of us walk in together, his face dropped. His father leaned over and whispered something, probably realizing they were screwed. The hearing was intense. Riley's lawyer tried to paint Sarah as unstable, and me as some manipulative friend trying to break up their happy family, but then each woman stood up and told her story. The pattern was undeniable. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, kept looking at Riley with increasing disgust. When they presented the evidence from the USB drive, Riley's father actually got up and left the courtroom. Guess he couldn't stomach seeing what his son really was. Riley kept trying to interrupt, saying the women were lying, until the judge threatened to hold him in contempt. The final blow came when they played the security footage from the hospital, showing Riley trying to take Lily and attacking me. The courtroom went dead silent. The judge granted the permanent restraining order immediately. She also awarded Sarah full custody of Lily, with Riley getting no visitation rights until he completed anger management and parenting classes. Plus, he was facing criminal charges for the hospital incident and violating the temporary restraining order. As we left the courtroom, Riley's lawyer was already negotiating with the prosecutor. Given the overwhelming evidence, Riley accepted a plea deal. 2 years in state prison followed by 5 years of probation. The multiple felony charges, including attempted kidnapping, assault, and repeated restraining order violations, could have resulted in a much longer sentence, but the prosecutor prioritized getting a guaranteed conviction over risking a trial. Riley himself just stood there, staring at us with this empty look. For the first time, I wasn't scared of him. He seemed small somehow. Outside, Sarah handed Lily to Jennifer and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," I corrected her. "You're the bravest person I know." The next few months were hard, but in a different way. Sarah and Lily moved into my apartment after I fixed the door Riley had kicked in. We set up a nursery in what used to be my home office. I didn't mind working from the kitchen table. Riley began serving his prison sentence, and his father cut him off financially after finding out about all the other women. Apparently, even lawyer dads have limits. Sarah started therapy again, this time with a specialist in domestic violence. She had nightmares for a while, jumping at every noise. But slowly, she started to seem more like her old self. She'd laugh at stupid TV shows and sing off-key to Lily. She even started talking about going back to school to finish her degree. One night, about 4 months after Lily was born, we were sitting on the couch watching some reality show. Lily was asleep in her bassinet nearby. Sarah turned to me with this serious look. "I need to tell you something," she said. My heart dropped. Was she moving out? Going back to Riley somehow? "I've been thinking about what happened that night at your place," she continued. "When Riley said you tried to kiss him, I tensed up. We hadn't really talked about that night. I knew he was lying," she said quietly. "I knew it right away, but I was too scared to stand up to him." I blinked, surprised. "You knew?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I've wanted to apologize for so long. I abandoned you when you were just trying to protect me." I grabbed her hand and squeezed it. "Hey, no, you don't need to apologize. He was manipulating you. That's what abusers do." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I just want you to know that I never believed him. Not really. And I'm so sorry it took me so long to get away from him." We hugged for a long time after that. Lily woke up and started fussing, so we both went to check on her. Sarah picked her up and rocked her gently. "Want to hold your goddaughter?" she asked me. I nearly choked. "Goddaughter? Well, yeah," Sarah said like it was obvious. "Who else would I pick?" I took Lily in my arms, this tiny human who somehow already had my whole heart. She grabbed my finger with her little hand and held on tight. A few weeks later, we revived our old Pinterest board. Our future life got some updates, baby-friendly vacation spots, toddler bedroom ideas, and a whole section on single mom hacks. We still had our matching tattoo plans, just pushed back a few years. Sarah found a part-time job at a bookstore that had a daycare area where Lily could stay while she worked. I kept my job at the boutique, but picked up some freelance design work on the side to help with expenses. We made it work. The other women from Riley's past became like family. We had monthly dinners where everyone brought food and shared updates on their lives. Amanda got engaged. Mary started her own business. Everyone was moving forward. 1 year after Lily was born, we threw a big birthday party at the park. All our friends came, including Jamie and Barbara from the boutique, David and his girlfriend, and Jennifer with her new puppy. Sarah's parents were there too. She'd reconnected with them after leaving Riley. As I watched Sarah help Lily blow out her birthday candle, I thought about how much had changed in 2 years. From losing my best friend to gaining a whole family. From feeling helpless to finding strength I didn't know I had. That night, after everyone left and Lily was asleep, Sarah and I sat on the balcony with glasses of cheap wine. "Remember our old plans?" she asked, scrolling through our Pinterest board on her phone. "Greece and Japan? Still gonna happen," I said confidently, just with a tiny third wheel now. She laughed and got serious again. "I don't think I ever thanked you properly for not giving up on me." I shrugged, embarrassed. "That's what friends do." "No," she said firmly. "Most people would have walked away. You didn't." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just clinked my glass against hers. "To us," I said. "To us," she echoed. "And to Lily, who's going to grow up surrounded by badass women who have her back." I smiled, thinking about the future stretching ahead of us. Not perfect, but ours. And Riley-free. Last week, I was organizing some old photos and found one from senior year. Me and Sarah making stupid faces at the camera, arms around each other's shoulders. I framed it and put it on the shelf next to a new one. Me, Sarah, and Lily at the beach, all wearing matching sunglasses. Sometimes I think about how close I came to losing my best friend forever, how Riley almost succeeded in destroying her. But then I look at Sarah now, laughing, strong, free, and I know that some bonds can't be broken, no matter how hard someone tries.